Here is your homework over target 2. So just a reminder, we're getting our variable by itself and we're getting rid of the squared by taking the square root of both sides. So at number 1, it's actually pretty basic because all we have to go straight into is the square root. So I have x equals, remember we have plus and minus, and then 9 is a perfect square, so the square root of 9 is 3. Not a lot to do there. Number 2 is pretty similar, so to get rid of the squared, I square root both sides. So I have n equals plus or minus. Now this is not a perfect square, so let's talk about how we'd simplify that. So first of all, there's a negative under the square root. So we have the square root of negative 1 and the square root of positive 24. So remember the square root of negative 1 is I. And then 24 isn't a perfect square, but it can be simplified. So if we make a factor tree, I'm going to choose 12 and 2. And I'm going to choose 4 and 3. And then 4, I'm going to choose 2 and 2. So if I rewrite my answer, I have plus or minus I square root of 2 times 2 times 3 times 2. If I look for pairs, I have a pair of 2's. So that means that the 2 comes out in front. We still have a plus or minus, still have the I, and then we have 3 times 2 under the square root. So my final answer would be plus or minus 2I square root 6. Alright, looking at number 3, so in order to solve for k, we first need to divide both sides by negative 5, so 480 divided by 5, that gives us, hold on, let me write that up. K squared equals 96. So we got rid of that negative, so we go straight to the square root. So we have k equals plus or minus the square root of 96. And we have to see if this is going to simplify at all. So that's the same as 2 times 48. I think this is going to simplify. That would be 2 and 24. 12 and 2. That would be 3 and 4. 4 would be 2 and 2. So when I go to rewrite my answer, that would be plus or minus. I didn't have any numbers out in front. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. I think I got it all there. So I have a pair of 2's, so 2 2's out in front. Remember the plus and minus goes in front of everything. And then under the square root, I have a 2 and a 3. So this would be plus or minus 4 square root 6. And then on number 4, I'm going to subtract 4 to start with. So I have m squared equals 92. Same process, just different numbers. So I have m equals plus or minus the square root of 92. 92 breaks down into 2 and 46. 46, I could do 2 and 23. Neither of those break down. So if I rewrite, I have plus or minus square root of 2 times 2 times 23. I'm going to look for pairs. I have a pair of 2's. So a 2 comes out in front. Don't forget your plus and minus in front of that. Square root of 23. And that would be my final answer for number 4. Going on to the back of your homework. So we're still working to get, in this case, m by itself. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So that's 6m squared equals negative 120. Gotta get rid of that 6. So we have m squared equals negative 20. And take the square root to get rid of the squared. So I have m equals plus or minus, and then because there's a negative, we know there will be an I in our answer. So making it I square root positive 20, and then we have to see if we can simplify this. So I'm going through that process. And then if you take a look, and so I've been rewriting this, but you can also do this just by taking a look at your factor tree to see if you have any doubles. I can see I have a pair of doubles. So that means the 2 comes out in front with the I, and the 5 will stay under. So if you can start taking some of those shortcuts, then the process will be just a little bit shorter for you. If not, just go back to the old way of doing things. On number 6, I'm going to start by subtracting 1. So I have 6b squared equals negative 66. I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So we get b squared equals negative 11. Take the square root of both sides, so I get b equals plus or minus, because there's a negative under the radical, that would be I, square root 11. 11 is not a perfect square. If I tried to break it down, the only way to break it down is 11 and 1, which means it can't be simplified, so that would be my final answer. On number 7, I'm going to start by subtracting 9. So I have 4b squared equals 400. And then I've got to get rid of that 4, so I'm going to divide. So I have v squared equals 100. I'm going to take the square root. So v equals plus or minus. Now 100 is a perfect square. Square root of that is 10. Looking on number 8, I'm going to start by adding 5 to both sides. So I have 8x squared equals negative 8. Got to get rid of that 8, so I'm going to divide. So I have x squared equals negative 1. I'm going to take the square root, and then we've talked about how the square root of negative 1 is equal to I. So this is just plus or minus I. And that is your homework over Target 2.